Perhaps, then, you may be able to advise me then on how I should prepare myself before going to live in Gaia since you have lived there before, Pete told me. Of course, I replied. I have always lived in the city, but every time I went to a rural area, I felt happier and more cheerful. But when I compare it to my experience here over these past few days, I appreciate that the air here is 10 times cleaner and fresher than at even the most rural places in my world. But I think there's more to it than that. If you plan to move to my planet after having lived here for so long, you will need to be totally prepared to experience some bad things that can occur unexpectedly, some to an extent that are beyond my description. Oh, you mean a negative frequency or negative charge. I've already been warned about this by some former volunteers. They told me that the reason why you often feel uncomfortable living in the city is because the negative charges there are very intense. This is caused by two factors. The first one is the artificial electric waves generated by the people in your world. They come from the alternating current, like in devices with electric motors. This also includes the high radio frequencies of your wireless communication signals. The second cause is your own consciousness, which also produces these frequencies. These frequencies have a very high negative value, which originates mostly from emotions and feelings like hatred, anger, envy, bitterness, and so on, and they accumulate and hover above the area of their respective sources. Actually, these frequencies can affect the cells in our body when we come in direct contact with them, Pete explained. So, what can you do to protect yourself? I asked. The easiest way is to try and avoid those places. However, we have discovered another good method to protect ourselves from those frequencies, as we can't always avoid them. We could wear suits made from metal fibers to shield us from those waves. The best ones are made of golden fibers. Although gold is much softer compared to other metals, its energetic property is so high that the other metals don't even come close to what we need to shield us from even the most harmful radiation. We use these kind of metal fibers to make everything from hats and clothes, like this loose outer robe I am wearing now, Pete said. And these garments really fully protect you? I asked. Of course, they do. We've been wearing them for millions of years, he said. Can I touch and feel the texture? I was curious to find out more about this fine material. Go ahead, Pete said, holding part of his long shirt out for me to touch. I reached out and gently rubbed the material between my fingers. It feels like a normal fabric. We have improved the weaving technology over the years to create this fabric. At first, about 800 million years ago, the fabric was much rougher and harder. We can still see some examples in our historical information room on the second floor, next to the children's classroom, Pete said as he led me up the stairs. Here we are, this is your room, Pete said, opening the door. I stepped inside and noticed that it was a nice corner room with windows on both sides that offered a magnificent view of the city. Have a good rest, Tim. You must be quite tired after this long day. See you in the morning, he said cheerfully, as he went out and closed the door behind him. Thank you very much, Pete. I called after him. In fact, I didn't feel tired at all. However, since Ruthorn had told me to rest and revise the lessons that I had learnt during the day, I thought it would be wise to heed his advice. I wasn't sure, but I thought I had detected a hidden message in his words. I went to the windows and opened them wide to let some fresh air in. The view was really beautiful in the evening, especially when seen from this height. The temperature in the room was ideal, not too warm and not too cold, and I felt a gentle breeze coming in from the windows. When I looked out, I saw the dark landscape and the city below, now illuminated with lights. Though the sun had already set behind the horizon, the sky wasn't fully dark yet. I sat down on the bed and thought of what I had to do next, while I remembered to breathe deep and long. As I sat in silence, I felt something strange happening. I knew I had learnt something very important today, but I couldn't precisely identify what it was. I could only say that I felt more relieved than I had ever felt before. It wasn't a normal feeling of relief, as it felt much deeper than that. It made me feel so happy that I wanted to cry. And in that moment, I experienced an epiphany on the revelation of so many truths. I also realized that Ruthorn must have known what I was about to experience, and that he had decided to let me savor that moment alone. I lay awake on my bed for a long time, contented with the feeling of now being able to understand so many things, before I finally drifted into a deep sleep.